The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen and Matt Gutierrez.
Good morning, Raider Nation. Welcome back to Las Vegas's only all Raiders all the time sports show. We're coming to you live from the Dollar Loan Center, don'tbebroke.com studios. This is Silver and Black Today on a glorious Sunday morning in the Mojave Desert. The temperature is starting to rise, and soon your face will be melting, as it always does for 6 months a year. Out here, hi, I'm your host, Scott Gulbransen, founder and publisher of silverandblacktoday.com. Joined today by my co-host, NFL draft analyst for silverandblacktoday.com, Kelly Kriner. Welcome back, brother.
Oh, thanks for having me back, man.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, though. The way you're looking at me, I might not let you back in.
I don't blame you.
All right. We'll get to Kelly here in a minute. Reminder, we are streaming today's show worldwide on the radio.com app. And trust me, if you don't already have this app, you are missing out. Radio.com is the place for the best sports radio, music, talk, you name it. Download it and listen to us anywhere in the world. We are not streaming today's show on video, by the way, as usual. We'll be back to that next week. As always, check out our website, silverandblacktoday.com. This week, Chris Reed continued his look at the Raiders draft targets. That stuff is, man, it's been blowing up the site. And yours truly wrote a piece about why Derek Carr taking on the First Take crew over at ESPN was a good thing. We'll talk about that later as well. So make sure you head over to silverandblacktoday.com. Okay, let's get going here and tell you what's ahead on today's show. In the first hour, the Raiders were at it again in Las Vegas. Another big community donation, this time to a cause near and dear to the hearts of Raider Nation and to team owner Mark Davis, domestic violence. Our own chief correspondent, David Stepanian, was there, and he'll have the story. We'll talk to him a little bit after it, if he can stay on target and not talk too much, right, David? David's engineering the show as well, so we'll make sure he does that. He will. He's a pro. Also, in the first hour, we'll talk Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith from ESPN. That's a hot topic this week for Raider Nation. They're at war with your Raiders. They're talking a lot and taking no prisoners, but Derek Carr, the franchise, wasn't about to stay quiet on this one, and he perceived it to be a character assassination by the talking heads on America's leading sports television network. We'll play the clips and get your reaction. What do you think? Get on the phones now at 702-889-5978. That's 702-889-5978. What do you think of this football version of the Hatfields and McCoys? I don't know if that's a good one. Is that a good analogy, Kelly? Nah. That's more like a blood feud. That goes much deeper.
Yeah. I actually have a friend who married into the Hatfield family.
No way.
And yeah, his single goal was to bring that rivalry back because they're all kind of...
They're friends now. Yeah, they take pictures together.
He was trying to just kind of spark that rivalry again.
By marrying the daughter, right, and causing some trouble.
Oh, yeah.
One of our favorite guests also will call in on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line as we go to Cincinnati and talk with Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus. Gayle will give us his impressions of yesterday's Senior Bowl, who helped their stock and who hurt it, and what might be the Raiders coaching staff and what they learned and that could help them revise and hone in their draft board. We'll ask Austin those questions. We'll close out the hour with our winners and losers from Mobile. Kelly and I will give you some sound from Coach Gruden on his take during his short coaching stint during the Senior Bowl. The second hour starts with X's and O's. Senior NFL analyst for silverandblacktoday.com, Chris Reed, joins us from the Valley of the Sun, and he'll recap his breakdown of 6 players to keep your eyes on as the Raiders prepare for the draft. Is Josh Allen the edge answer for the Silver and Black? We'll go deep and geek out as Kelly evaluates their draft value as well. Also in the second hour, we get to Raiders back to Raiders talk, and we'll also look at more of what we think is a cool segment. We call it the Audible. Kelly is in the Audible seat. He's the quarterback under center, and I heard you got wiggly fingers when you're under center. Is that right?
I'm a shotgun guy.
Good.
5'7.5", can't see over that offensive line, so I've got to be in the gun.
All right, well, Kelly's the quarterback in segment 3, and he'll call the audible. He'll pick a subject at large. This one is going to be interesting. It might be a little divisive. I don't think it should be, but we'll talk about it. We'll argue. We'll take your calls and let you be the judge. Who's right? Who's wrong? It's your call. What do you think at 702-889-5978. We'll close out the show 15 minutes early today. We're only on until 9:45 Pacific time, and that is due to college basketball coming up here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 a.m. But we'll close it out with a little betting fun. Of course, it's Super Bowl week, Kelly, which means prop bets are up and ready for a wager. We're going to discuss those. Where are there good values? Where are the more wacky ones? I mean, there's some. We were going through the Superbook at the Westgate. We're going through their sheet today, and you said it's like 34 pages or whatever it is. I mean, there's everything.
Yeah, it's seems like every year they add more props, and people can't get enough of them. Even the ones that just, you're like, who's betting that? Well, somebody's betting it, or they wouldn't keep putting it back on a sheet. Yeah,
and it's got to be also that the more they do, the more money they bring in, because those prop bets, I can't imagine, are really winning much for the player. So we'll see that, and we'll talk about that. But there you have it, Raider Nation. You're up to date. We've set topics on the table for you here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio. Now it's your turn. Pick up the phone, 889-5978. Call us. The first two callers will get a brand spanking new free Silver and Black Today flag that says Sin City Raiders. It's hanging here in our studio. We'd usually point to it on video, but we're not on video. I'm puffy today. No, I'm just kidding. We're upgrading some equipment, so we'll be back on video next week. All right, so Kelly, let's talk a little bit about this week leading into the Super Bowl, right? So for Raider fans, it's been 16 years since they know what that week's been relevant to them. But as you see this machine start, it's, you had the Pro Bowl, nobody cares. I even forgot it was on.
I was waiting for some great Pro Bowl talk. I mean, that's
yeah. And the one thing, I'm not a big Tom Brady fan. I respect him. Think he is one of the best ever. But I love what he said this week. He said, "Look, I'm about rings. I'm not about Pro Bowls," which makes you think, why would they do it now? Of course, for guys like Jared Cook on the Raiders, who got to go to the Pro Bowl, who wasn't in the playoffs, had no other commitments going on at this point in time, it was a good thing for him, right? Because he gets to go, and I guess it's good for the Raiders just to have that logo on the field for the Pro Bowl. But I think the only way to make the Pro Bowl more relevant is to make sure that they move it to Las Vegas.
I think it would be better for the NFL to do that. I don't think you are ever going to really make the Pro Bowl relevant.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, how many guys end up making a Pro Bowl team now?
Yeah.
7 or 8 guys at each position always go down with an injury, and they're not going to be playing. So it's like you're getting down to your 10th quarterback could be a Pro Bowl quarterback this year. Nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants, the game's a joke. And so I mean, if you want to make it that's why the Orlando thing never made sense to me. At least when it's in Hawaii,
yeah,
the people are going to Hawaii for a weekend. It's a vacation for the family.
I think the thing with Orlando was for players, it was a family destination. So they figured players would come because they'd bring their wife and kids, if they have a wife and kid. Not everybody does. And it would make it a more family-friendly environment. You have Disneyland there, you have MGM, you have all that stuff going on. But to me, I mean, I think there has to be some sort of alternative to a game. Is there something else they could do, if they could do? But we'll find out. We have Wally, one of our loyal listeners here in Las Vegas, on the line now. We're going to go to him. Wally, what's happening, man? You're on the Silver and Black today.
Hey, man, I'm really pissed. Where does that pencil neck geek, Max Kellerman, get off criticizing Derek Carr's heart?
Well, you know what?
That guy couldn't take one hit that he takes. He might take 5 or 6 of them a game, man.
Yeah, well, you know what, Wally? I'm on your side on that. I wrote about it on the website this week, saying that Derek Carr was right to fight back on that one, particularly how it was positioned by Kellerman. And we're going to talk about that in the next segment. I got all the audio and stuff. But it's good to hear that you think that. I think Raider fans in general, those that aren't already anti-Derek Carr, because there is a segment of Raider fans who don't believe Derek Carr is the answer at quarterback, despite evidence to the contrary. So I agree with you, and we're going to get into that in the next segment as we're about to go to a break here in a few minutes. But Wally, I mean, having been in the media myself, it's a tough thing because you're going to report on guys, you're going to talk about their performance. And you yourself, I wrote about it in my column. I played football up until I was a sophomore in high school. I was too slow. I was too soft. I was not a good football player. I just wasn't.
Shocking.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. But you know, Wally, it's tough because you have to write about these guys. You have to talk about them. But I think they crossed the line, again, because they made it about character, not just about performance. You agree with that?
Yeah, you don't question a guy's heart. You can question why he threw a stupid interception. You know, that's open for debate. But you can't question his heart. That guy's got a heart the size of California, man.
Hopefully he doesn't tax his heart as much as California taxes its people. But no, I agree. I agree with you, Wally. And again, we're going to get real in depth on that in the next segment. We appreciate you calling in, man, and we'll send you out a flag. Make sure you get David your address, and we'll get it out to you, brother.
Right on, man. Have a good one.
All right, Wally in Las Vegas. Appreciate it. Yeah, man. I know we're going to go into it, Kelly, after the break, but it's interesting. I made it much more about culture, right? And you and I talk about this off the air all the time, which is, people today, it's like, I don't know where, I call them keyboard tough guys all the time because it's usually on social media. Yeah. Now, this is somebody in the media, which is a little bit different, but I don't know if there's any limits anymore. Not that the Carr thing was so egregious. He didn't call his wife a terrible name or call his kids ugly or something. I'm not saying that, but I don't know if there's any limits anymore.
I don't either. And it's kind of a fine line because I think like the whole comment about, somebody's character and somebody's heart, that is something that comes up in football. So, I mean,
good point.
It can be not a direct slam at him, but it's something that's coming up. So it's a very fine line to cross.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to play the sound. If you didn't hear, which most of you probably have, but we're going to play it anyway. We're going to play a lot of the audio that led up to this whole feud after the break. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. The law.
CBS Sports Radio.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Rodney Hudson, who should have been in the Pro Bowl. Unbelievable. But anyway, we are here, Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio. It is Sunday. It is Pro Bowl Sunday. Who cares? Super Bowl Sundays next week. What we want to do, we're going to talk about the whole Carr, Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith argument when we come back after this. But we want to get to a story. As you know, the Raiders continue to put deep roots here in the community in Las Vegas. We talk about those events every week here on the show when they happen. And again, this week, the Raiders were out donating money and lending their name and their energy and funds to a great cause, and that was around domestic violence and Safe Nest. Safe Nest is an important program here in Las Vegas to help the police department and those that find themselves in those situations. And our chief correspondent, David Stepanian, was there, and here's the story.
When it comes to domestic violence, the Raiders do what they can to help put a stop to these acts. The Raiders paid a visit to Safe Nest in Las Vegas to present a grant that will help Safe Nest recruit volunteers, which, according to Safe Nest CEO Liz Ortenberger, benefits Metro Police with 417 calls, the police code for domestic violence.
Well, we were incredibly excited from the start when we knew the Raiders were coming, and as we researched the kind of work they do in the communities where they've been present before. And then once we started to sit down and have conversations with all of their key people, it was clear that this was going to be a great partnership. So the gift today will help us do all of our volunteer recruitment over the next year. So essentially what the Raiders are doing is building this program from a niche in one area command to citywide across all of our area commands. So they are a huge part of ending domestic violence homicides in Las Vegas.
With the help of Safe Nest, domestic violence has seen a decrease in the valley in recent years. The Raiders presented a check for $20,000 to demonstrate their continued commitment in bettering the Las Vegas community, especially for a subject that's close to home for Raider and UNLV alum Leo Gray.
I mean, because I don't think it's talked about enough. I don't think enough is being done, but they're very aggressive out here. I come from Los Angeles, and I had an opportunity to do some things with some of the programs out there. And this is on another level, what Safe Nest is doing out here. I mean, someone said it earlier. It's one thing to drop off, canned goods, to drop off clothing, to drop off different things from a voluntary standpoint. But when you're actually going out there counseling and creating change, that's big, that's important. So it's easy for me to be a part of it. It means a lot because I came out here in 1975 out of high school. it was 150,000 people. Now you have over 2 million. So, to do what they're doing and to be as active as they are, it's important. Yeah. And it's touching a lot of people. I can't go anywhere without hearing positive things from different groups and from different, as it relates to different social ills. So it's important.
Thanks to SafeNest, Metro has been able to expand their 417 patrol from 3 days a week to 7 days a week in the Spring Valley and northwest parts of Las Vegas, and will soon be expanding to other parts of the valley. To learn more about SafeNest and their mission, head over to safenest.com. For Silver and Black Today, I'm David Stepanian.
All right, thank you to David for that story. Again, the Raiders in the community, $20,000 donation. And David, we'll bring you on really quick here. With this, for the Raiders, it's very close, near and dear to their heart. Owner Mark Davis, every year with their Cleats for a Cause, he wears shoes around domestic violence. It's an issue important to the Raiders because if you go back to the Ken Stabler situation with his daughter, who was unfortunately the victim of domestic violence, cost her life. What did you get the sense for the kind of personal nature between the Raiders and this subject?
I really feel when I was there, I really felt like this was something the Raiders cared about. This was something really near and dear to not just the Raiders, but the league in general. It's something sort of under a microscope right now, and it's a little bit of a soft spot for the NFL and the league in general. So I think it was really important for the Raiders to come out and do something like this and show that they're making a commitment against domestic violence.
All right, David. Well, thank you, man. As always, great work doing some fantastic news reporting there, which you don't hear anywhere else here in Las Vegas on sports radio, so we appreciate that very much. Okay, so now we're going to move into, Kelly, our fun with the Kellerman / Stephen A. Smith / Derek Carr feud. Okay? So if you guys missed it, which if you did, I don't know what you've been doing. You've been in a hole or you've been on a bender. I don't know. But this week on ESPN's First Take, Max Kellerman, they were talking about the Senior Bowl and they were talking about John Gruden's comments, which we're going to get to later too, about how he's changed his look at the prototype quarterback. And so with that, Max Kellerman had this to say about Derek Carr.
The first half of the season, he looked shell-shocked. He looked like a quarterback who had quit. And by the way, I've said this about Eli Manning, and even players who are great. You can see, just like, different players get called out for taking plays off, you can see where a quarterback don't want it. Carr didn't want it. And I think Gruden knows they got to move on.
All right, so there's Max Kellerman, in essence saying that Carr didn't want it, questioning, I think I don't know if I would say it was character, which we'll hear Carr say in a second, but definitely questioning whether or not he was putting everything into the game, right, Kelly? I mean, especially early in the season.
Yeah, every time I hear that or every time I listen to it, I don't think that this should have escalated to the point that it has. It never should, because whatever a talking head says about a player never should matter. It's just the way Max says that. You can tell he's taking a jab.
Yeah,
it's not. I mean,
great point.
If he just kind of, but he makes sure that I'm making this point for this point. If he just makes that as a comment or makes that as analysis, it's one thing. But the way he says he didn't want it, it's just that snide backhand, and that's just what media does now.
Yeah, it made it very, very personal. And here's what Carr, and this is Carr's official response on the Golick and Wingo show the next day.
The part where he, goes in, and again, people talk about performance all the time. That stuff doesn't bother me. It's happened for 5 years now, plus if you count college. So that stuff doesn't bother you at all. He said something where he questioned my desire and want to. This man has never talked to me in my entire life. This man has never worked out with me. He's never woke up early with me to study, to go and play hurt and all these kind of things. And so, you can say whatever you want about performance and all that. That's his job, and I understand that. But when you start talking about a man's character and want to and desire, that's just a different story. And I don't think there's anybody holding these guys accountable when they go off on those kind of tangents. And so I'm just someone that loves the truth.
Loves the truth. So to your point, Kelly, and I think this is what Carr was getting at, was like, look, you can say I'm a sucky quarterback and that the Raiders should move on. I don't think he would have cared because people have been saying it all year frankly, since the beginning of the year. And they continue, even in press conferences, when you start asking John Gruden about quarterbacks in the first round, that implies, does it not, that they don't feel like, or reporters are putting on to the coach that maybe they don't have the quarterback they need.
Yeah, and especially with Gruden at the helm, I mean, he's a quarterback. He loves every quarterback except for the one he has. So everybody's always going to kind of throw that stuff his way.
Right.
I think even if Carr was playing at a Pro Bowl level, you're still going to have people asking John Gruden about, Kyler Murray in this draft or about, like next year Tua. It's just because he's just, he did the quarterback camp. Every time he gushes over everybody, it's just that's what he is. He loves quarterbacks.
He does. And oh, by the way, just a quick correction. I want to thank Raider B Girl, who's a listener of ours. I incorrectly said Kenny Stabler's daughter with domestic violence, which was not. It was Freddie Biletnikoff's daughter. So that was just mistake. I was thinking of the snake for some reason. But anyway, back to this subject, and thank you for that, by the way. Back to this subject. I agree with that. And by the way, It doesn't mean that Derek Carr is going to be the Raider quarterback for the next 2 years. You don't know. Okay, so that said, so Carr says this. He comes out. What I think exacerbated a little bit was Carr was tagging Dana White and saying, "Hey, let's get into the octagon." I looked at that as a joke. I didn't think Derek Carr wanted to actually fight these two guys because it wouldn't be a fight. Number one, number two. I took it when I first read it in jest. Right. Dana White, I mean, it's ridiculous on the face of it, so why would you take it seriously?
That's the exact point right there. I mean, every athlete would love to just go after, like, a media guy that's going after him. But, everybody knows you're not going to be able to. You can't do that. This was obviously a joke, and the fact that got any traction at all just shows how bad the media and everything is, because they'll just grab onto anything and run with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that happens. Carr does that interview, and then, David, if we go to clip number 4, here is Stephen A. Smith's reaction. Now, Stephen A. Smith, Carr called both of them clowns because they're on a show together, although Stephen A. Smith didn't really get digs in on Carr in the original interview. But here's what Smith came back with after Carr went on the show to defend himself.
First of all, he went on Golick and Wingo this morning, but on Twitter last night when he was going back and forth with Dana White, not only did he call us clowns, but he talked about us wanting us in the octagon. That's what he said. All right, that's what he tweeted. Then you go on Golick and Wingo this morning, and suddenly you talking about your kids and how your kids could Google and watch and hear Max questioning your character. Well, last time I checked, Max, you brag about the fact that you got kids. We know I do. So my point is this. Well, what do you think calling us clowns? I mean, you don't care about that. Well, we're supposed to care about it for you when you're performing in front of millions of people. So I don't want to hear anything about a sympathy card. You ain't getting one this way.
So there's Stephen A. Smith. He doesn't want to, kind of brush it under and do it. He wants to go and even make it more personal because he's calling Carr a hypocrite. Which also, if you look at some of the reporting that's been going on and some of the statements going on, it's also a dig at his faith because Carr is very public with his faith. Yeah. I think that's also a dig on that. Just made it much worse. I mean, and we're going to move on to a break here, but we'll finish up a discussion on this maybe later. But just crazy stuff. The media has crossed the line, I think, in many cases. I will defend the media. They have the right to criticize whoever they want. I think you just need to keep it in context. Okay, we're going to step aside for some breaks, and when we come back, Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus will join us, and we're going to focus on the Senior Bowl, his impressions, who improved their stock, and who hurt it. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
CBS Sports Radio.
Callers and guests on the Newsmaker line are brought to you by the Law Office of Michael A. Troiano. The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
That's right. Anytime, anywhere, worldwide on the radio.com app. You are listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas. We go out now on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line, and we bring in our good friend from Pro Football Focus, Austin Gayle. Austin, how you doing this morning?
Doing great, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, hey, you're getting a little time off, but in the NFL today and covering the NFL, there is no such thing.
No,
right?
Not at all. Pro Football Focus runs year round, definitely on the football side of things. I don't think I even sleep until June.
That's right. You get June off, right? Between that, the draft and all that stuff, OTAs, and then camp. All right, Austin, let's jump into yesterday's game. A lot of guys stuck out. I actually was a little underwhelmed, I thought, by the number of guys. I think last year's game, there was a lot more surprises. A lot of guys just jumped way out of the sheet at you and off the screen. This year, not as much, but there was some folks who really helped themselves in the Senior Bowl this year as far as maybe moving their draft stock up quite a bit.
I think Dalton Risner is the guy that jumps off the page for me. This guy had an outstanding practice week and an outstanding game in a draft class where the top offensive tackle is still, being debated. It's not a clear-cut, front runner right now, and I think Risner really made a push for that spot because of how well he played. I know Jonah Williams is great, Greg Little, but this guy played very well. I'm excited to see him and Andy Isabella. Andy Isabella had a great week, was dicing people up in one-on-ones, which is easy to do when you're as talented as he is, and him to also show up in the game itself was outstanding.
Yeah, and I think, you since you're talking about wide receivers, too, Keelan Doss out of UC Davis. The reason I love the Senior Bowl is you have guys that if you watch during the year, and I know you guys keep a focus on everybody, so you're seeing everything. Most fans, though, they tend to see what's on TV. They see the big 5 schools, and then they see maybe the regional conferences and the mid-majors. But a guy like Keelan Doss out of UC Davis had I think, a great week as well, 55 yards and a catch, including some dramatics. And he's a guy that I like too, and I'm not saying he's a first round pick because he's from he's not from an FBS school, but what did you see from him too that maybe helped him improve his stock a little bit?
He made a name for himself. I think that's the hardest thing to do coming out of a school like UC Davis because that tape doesn't get turned on a ton. When you're a scout or a coach, you're not turning on UC Davis tape to really find even anyone that really gets drafted in the NFL, but going to the Senior Bowl and having the week he did have and the game he had really made a name for himself to where he's going to be probably drafted in those first 7 rounds. I think that's something that he did with his Senior Bowl play. I think his size stood out to me, and his catching ability. I think his catch radius. Very exciting to see a guy like that coming from such a small school, perform like he did on the biggest of stages when it comes to the college's All-Star games.
Hey, Austin, it's Kelly Kriner here. Montez Sweat was one of the guys that I projected in the Raiders' first-round mock with one of their picks in the 20s. From everything I read and saw, had a pretty good Senior Bowl. Do you think he improved his stock enough to move up, or would he still be? Do you think he still might be there towards the end of that first round for a Raider selection?
I think there's some instances this past week where you think he improved his stock, but then when you've seen him going against Risner, it was a different story. It was like Risner really dominated that matchup, but when Sweat was going against other guys, he had some success. But that matchup, and them playing each other also, it's huge. And I think Sweat, I don't know if he moved up a ton. I think more people are going to go back and watch his tape, really, look at him as a prospect. You have to, reconsider where you had him before with how he performed in the Senior Bowl. But I still think his draft stock is in the same spot that it was when he entered the week.
Yeah, and again, we're talking to Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus about the Senior Bowl and who stuck out and who didn't. We did a poll on Twitter asking Raider fans who they'd like to see based on the game yesterday, and Andy Isabella with 54% of the votes was the lead. Second was Montez Sweat, the two guys we just talked about. Now, Austin, in this game, too, of course, the quarterback position, I'm one that believes the Raiders won't get a quarterback, especially in the first round. It doesn't mean they won't get a quarterback. But one of the guys that stuck out, of course, was Drew Lock. He was one going in that a lot of people had eyes on. But then Daniel Jones from Duke, who had he was the player of the game. He finished 8 of 11, 112 yards, one passing touchdown and 1 rushing. His performance is earning a lot of kudos. I thought, though, if you watch the game, there was a lot to be concerned with how he was passing. The numbers might have been there. What did you think of Daniel Jones?
I think the box score looks great, but I'm glad you spoke to the tape itself and looking at how he performed. There are a lot of question marks. He still struggles with accuracy, decision making, and a lot of those woes. It's hard to really see him as a first round prospect right now. And I think when you compare him to other quarterbacks in this class, you can get higher on him because there isn't a ton of quarterback talent in this draft class. That's been talked about a lot, all through this pre-draft process. You can start to take to his talents because there's not really a clear front runner, but really you have to pull yourself back and look at this guy as a prospect and really you have to consider not drafting him in the first round and thinking about him as a second, third round pick as a developmental prospect. But because quarterback position is so valuable, you can see him shoot up boards just because you need him. It's the most important position in the NFL, and that's why they get overdrafted all the time. The highest bust rate, I'm pretty sure, is for quarterbacks, because they get drafted so high, it can sometimes fail to meet expectations. But, I think Drew Lock came out of that with the best week. I think he had the best week. Will Greer out of West Virginia, who graded very highly for Pro Football Focus, had an opportunity to really push himself into that top 2, top 3 conversation, but I don't think he did. Struggled in practice, didn't stand out in the game. I think he needs a good combine and some good interviews to really drive up boards again.
You mentioned Drew Lock. You see the arm talent whenever he's out there. He can make the throws. Is it just a footwork issue to where he's off balance all the time or throwing off his back foot? Or do you think there are really some accuracy issues he needs to work with?
Well, it could be a footwork issue. It's all, with accuracy, it's going to come back to technique. The accuracy is really tough to teach because it's, you have a certain throwing motion. You have footwork that you've leaned on all through your career. You have to really switch up habits and tendencies to get more accurate with the football. You see time and time again that quarterbacks that struggle with accuracy at the college level, they still struggle with accuracy in the NFL because it's something that takes a long time to learn. And if you already instilled these bad habits with footwork and arm throw motion, I think it gets harder to fix that. You look at Christian Hackenberg, Connor Cook, Lamar Jackson struggled with accuracy too, and they still are really trying to find, not anymore with Hackenberg, but still trying to find accuracy, improving accuracy in the NFL level.
All right, we're talking to Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus about the Senior Bowl. One quick, I want to get in before I start getting some folks that may have hurt themselves and didn't play well or perform well. But Kalen Saunders, the defensive tackle out of Western Illinois, I know for Raider fans, they keep saying, we need edge, we need edge, we need edge. If you're a Raider fan, I thought, if you could improve your inside. Saunders, real quick, Austin, I thought he was another big surprise from a small school.
No, I agree. I think his athleticism stood out with the back slips, but also he played well in the game, and having that quick twitch as a big guy like he is so important at the next level. You see the best defensive tackles or interior defensive linemen in today's NFL are smaller guys. Aaron Donald, Geno Atkins, Grady Jarrett, these smaller, quicker, more athletic guys because you need to attack the passer. I think he's a guy that can do that. Mack out of Mississippi State was another guy that really stood out for me. Both those guys helped out a ton. And for the people that are screaming edge, you draft the best player. It doesn't matter. You have to draft the best player. If you get an important interior defensive line and those guys are good, that's all that matters. If you force edge and maybe bring in a guy that's not as good as other interior defensive linemen, I think you make a mistake.
All right, so Austin, who out of the names out there, and seeing not only from a performance base on the field during the game, but also during practice and then during time spent with coaches, who took a step back and maybe hurt themselves more than helped themselves at the Senior Bowl?
I think, going back to Will Greer, I think Will Greer really had not so much that he hurt himself, but he didn't take advantage of the opportunity. He had an opportunity to come out of this week and out of this game as a big name, a Drew Lock, Daniel Jones name that gets brought up a ton. But instead, he kind of took a step back because he didn't take advantage of that opportunity. Accuracy concerns. It looked like he was out of rhythm. That was a concern for me, especially because I'm kind of pulling for the guy because of how well he graded in the Pro Football Focus system, and I think there's a lot of potential there with arm talent and throwing deep down the field specifically. However, you have to be disappointed about how he wasn't able to kind of climb up in this already weak quarterback draft class.
Yeah, and Trace McSorley, too, was there trying to, the guy who went through so many injuries and all that. He, I don't think, did anything to help himself as well. And when you look at the entirety of the Senior Bowl, Austin, the fact that the Raiders coaching staff was there, talk about what that's going to mean for them going into player evaluations and how they refine their draft board going towards April.
Well, I think personally it's really easy to fall in love with a guy that you've already talked to and coached and been around for a whole week, including the game. It's easy to fall in love with the personality and his work ethic and how he approaches the game. And I think that's going to be hard for Gruden and company to overlook when they're comparing an Andy Isabella to another receiver they haven't had as much time with. And I think it's going to be hard for Gruden to move past guys like Nasir Adderley Andy Isabella, guys that he saw and coached in this Senior Bowl, or other guys that he hasn't spent time with. And I think having that opportunity as a coaching staff to talk to those players, coach those players, is so huge. And I think something that really can't be overstated in terms of draft evaluation, understanding the players in this class.
All right. Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus. Austin, thanks again. As always, man, we'll talk to you really soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus. Check him out on Twitter, Austin Gayle PFF, and, of course, ProFootballFocus.com. When we come back, we're going to go with some more of our own impressions around the Senior Bowl and talk a little more about that and hear from Coach Gruden. You're listening to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
Go Irish. All right, we are back here, Silver and Black Today on a Sunday. Beautiful, still winter, but going into spring. I can see the mountains from our window here at the studio with snow-capped mountains. It looks a little cloudy today. I thought it was going to be sunny, but you don't listen to us for weather, so I will stop talking about the weather. We are talking about the Senior Bowl. Again, thank you to Austin Gayle for joining us. Also, our sponsor, Attorney Michael Troiano. Make sure if you have any criminal defense needs, Michael Troiano is the guy to call. Check out TroianoVegasLaw.com. Hopefully you don't, but if you know somebody who needs the help, he's the guy for you. So check it out. All right, so back to the Senior Bowl, Kelly. Coach Gruden, in his press conference, coaching the North team this week, had a comment that created this whole media buzz that led to the Kellerman Carr feud, that led to a bunch of other coverage about what the Raiders may do. And I got to tell you, it's getting ridiculous. It just is getting ridiculous. But let's first play, David, this is cut number 10, what Gruden had to say about quarterbacks and about Kyler Murray.
I used to think that a lot until I saw Drew Brees twice a year in Tampa. And then I met Russell Wilson coming out of NC State. And now I'm watching this kid Murray at Oklahoma, and I am putting away all the prototypes that I once had. I used to have a prototype for hand size, height, arm length, all that stuff. We're looking for guys that can play and do a lot of different things, and they come in all shapes and sizes nowadays.
All right, so tell me what's newsworthy about that, Kelly. I mean, people ran with that as, they're going to move on from Derek Carr. They're going to draft Kyler Murray. Oh, come on.
People realize Gruden loves doing this more than anything, right?
He punks them all the time.
He's sitting at home trying to come up with ways to just screw with people like us, the media. He's like, I'm going to see what they're going to go with now. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if one day he's like, you know what, that kicker out of so-and-so, that could be oh my God, he's going to take a kicker high. I mean, this is what Gruden does.
Yeah, and he did it all season long. I mean, and this is what I said. There were two pieces on the website this week. One by our own Jay Burrows, who talked, look, Gruden, after this press conference, said, look, take Gruden with a grain of salt. Number one, all you got to do is look what happened this year. Part of the reason I came back was to coach number 52, so I'm going to trade him, right? So again, you don't take what a coach says, especially don't fool yourselves. Because he coached the Senior Bowl does not mean that he's not strategizing how they're going to work. He was there with every other head coach and GM in the league who were all looking at these players. It's an evaluation game. So why the hell would you go out and say, oh, I love this quarterback? You think that means that you really love that quarterback and you're going to take him? No, you're playing a shell game and you're playing chess so that your opponents think you're going to go one direction and then you go a different direction.
Or maybe he's thinking so far ahead that he thinks people are going to think that and forget this totally. They he's just saying that, and then bam, he pulls that trigger.
The whole enigma thing, right? He's Kaiser Soze all of a sudden. But to me, and then in my piece I wrote, look, it doesn't matter. You think Derek Carr is the quarterback or you don't. I respect opinions on both sides. I think there's evidence on both sides to make an argument that he should or shouldn't be the long-term solution for the Raiders at quarterback. But to think that John Gruden's going to go to the Senior Bowl and get up there and say, and basically kind of tip his hand that he's going to get rid of his quarterback and he's going to draft a 5'9" quarterback out of Oklahoma is just ludicrous.
Yeah. Well, he comes out and says that, then Mayock comes out and says there's not 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and we have one.
Exactly.
So you've got both of them playing both sides of everything. And that's just going to stoke that fire. Now, can they get along? Are they on the same page? So we get to run with that story now.
That's a good question. And Gruden actually was asked about working with Mayock. And this is, David, this is cut number 12, Gruden talking about working with Mike Mayock.
We meet after every practice. He's in the meetings with us. So, it's exciting to have a guy that, for a long time, that has very, very similar energy and passion and enthusiasm for what we're trying to do here. And there's a lot of common ground that we share. But we collaborate after every single day. No, I mean, he's going to learn quick. He's a quick study. He's been in every building. He came and visited me when I was coaching Tampa Bay and Oakland in the past. So he's been in every building in the league. That doesn't mean he has a whole lot of experience as a GM, but, if you know Mayock, he's going to be a quick study. And I saw him talking to Ozzie Newsome last night. So he's always on a mission to get better and improve himself and the Raiders.
Well, there you go. So that was what John Gruden had to say about working with Mike Mayock, and it is a different relationship. It's not a traditional GM role, but you're right. People are going to try to find a wedge until John Gruden wins. If he does, it's going to be like this. It just is.
Yeah. And not to stoke what I just said earlier, but didn't the first part of that sound like a couple that's getting ready to get divorced, talking about
Kelly,
how great they're working
listen,
together?
Kelly, he's starting. Oh my gosh, we're going to start calling you tabloid Kelly. But Carr, Gruden was also asked too about being in the advantages of coaching at the Senior Bowl. This is cut number 9, David. And here's what Gruden said about that.
Great to spend time with players on both teams. You might eliminate 4 or 5 players from your thought process. Sometimes that's just as valuable as moving 4 or 5 guys up on your board. But you get a chance to see them behind the scenes, who really loves it, who really learns it, and who can really execute a lot of football that you're putting in a short period of time. So it'll be very beneficial to us.
Interesting point, but Austin Gayle, who was on in the previous segment, he brought up something that I had not thought of. And that is, as much as Gruden just said, it's an advantage because you get inside information on these guys. You get to sit down with them. You spend more time with them. You get to see them in practice. Is the opposite of that is then you fall in love with a guy like Andy Isabella, right, which had a great game. He's a good receiver, don't get me wrong. But suddenly, are you in a situation where you're going to take him around higher because you spent so much time with him and you like the kid?
Yeah, the worst thing you can do when you're looking at talent's that kind of I was there bias to where I saw this, I see this, I'm on the sidelines and seeing this guy do this, but look at the talent he's going against. Look at, it is the Senior Bowl, which you're getting there was a decent cornerback class out there, but it's like you can't have this over everything else because you were there and watched this happen. No, exactly. And what's interesting, the last cut I'm going to play before we cut out of here for the top of the hour news update is he talked about Kyler Murray and prototypes and quarterbacks, but here's in cut 11, David, here's what Gruden says about quarterbacks and mentions one of the guys I like, actually, and I'll talk about him in a second.
Yeah, well, I've got 4 on our team that I'm focusing on. And Drew Lock is a talented, quick-arm customer at Missouri. I like Finley at NC State. I like his tape. Got a lot of production. Daniel Jones is going to be a first-round pick out of Duke. Been well-schooled. And we got McSorley, not a big quarterback, but a tough guy. Got a lot of Rich Gannon, Jeff Garcia in him. Bulldog, fighter-type quarterback. And I'll become more and more familiar with the South quarterbacks. I did meet with Will Greer last night, and I'm impressed with him.
All right, so there's Gruden on quarterbacks, and of course the quarterbacks he had were not 5'9" Kyler Murray types. He mentioned Drew Lock. We already talked about him. I don't think anything he said leads on to it, but I think, and I know you disagree with me, Kelly, but I think Ryan Finley would be a lower round option if you want a guy to come in and you're not worried about him starting soon, but maybe as backup. I don't think Ryan Finley's going to be a franchise quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think he could be a good backup with development in the league. Oh, if you're looking at him as just a backup to have on there, yeah, I mean, I would be fine with that as well. I mean, the guy's very accurate, but he's got a noodle for an arm. I mean, if you're trying to throw outside the numbers on the sidelines, he just doesn't have the gun to get it there. Yeah, no, good point. But again, though, I think you can't read too much into what Gruden was saying there at the Senior Bowl because everybody's watching. You're on a big stage, which is great in one side of it. On the other side of it, not so great because everyone's there. Your competitors are there. They're evaluating the same talent. And so the Senior Bowl will help in some ways, and in other ways, you hope it doesn't hurt them by falling in love. And we know that one of the criticisms of Gruden that I think has some fair evidence to it, at least in the past, has been that he falls in love with guys and he overlooks negatives that maybe you shouldn't overlook because he likes somebody so much.
And that's the thing. Evaluating your own talent is the hardest thing for a GM and a coach to do because, like you said, you saw something in this guy, you drafted this guy, you like this guy, and at some point you've got to be like, okay, this just didn't work. Or, okay, this guy doesn't have what I thought he did, and you've got to be able to pull that trigger.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, we are done with the first hour. When we come back after the top of the hour CBS Sports National Sports Update, we are going to be joined by Chris Reed. He is our senior NFL analyst at silverandblacktoday.com. Chris has been doing a series of Raiders draft breakdown pieces. Chris is our X's and O's guy. We're going to mix him and Kelly, who's the draft guy, to talk about some of these possible draft targets that Chris has outlined. You can check it out at silverandblacktoday.com. But we'll talk with him over the next couple segments about specific players and what the Raiders may do and if they are the right fit for them. Whew. All right. Happy Sunday. We'll be back right after the top of the hour break. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen and Matt Gutierrez.
Welcome back, Silver and Black Today. Today, Scott Gulbransen here, your host, along with my co-host today, Kelly Kriner. And David Stepanian, as our engineer and chief correspondent, are with you talking Raider football. We're talking today, we just finished the first hour really with a focus on not only the Carr feud with Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith, but also a lot on the Senior Bowl impressions that we saw there. Thanks for all your comments on Twitter. Great conversation happening there. We usually have a really just deep chat on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter when we're streaming the show on video. We're not streaming today on video. We'll be back with that next week. Also this week, we're focusing more on the college players next week, and our good friend and longtime listener, Corey Sanford, said, hey, what about free agency? We're going to focus on that next week. So Corey will be going deep on possible free agency targets for the Raiders, so stay tuned for that. Now, what we're going to do is, in our continued focus on college players, as we just finished the Senior Bowl and we're heading towards the Combine, just about a month away from now at the beginning of March in Indianapolis, Kelly's home state of Indiana.
Hey, you got it right this time.
Yes. I didn't say Kentucky this time. That's right. But we're going to now bring in on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line our senior NFL analyst for silverandblacktoday.com, our man down in Phoenix, Chris Reed. Chris, how you doing today?
Good, buddy. How's it going up there?
It's going good. We are jamming. There, as Austin said, there's just no more off season with the NFL. And one of the things that's just been blowing our site up since you started this series with people coming and reading, you have a popular breakdown series that you do throughout the course of the year talking about Raiders players. What we've done in the offseason and what you've done is do the same analysis, but with possible Raider targets in the 2019 NFL draft. As you go through the X's and O's and you evaluated these players, we focused so far on 6 of them. So we're going to try to get through as many as we can here this hour. Number 1, of course, is a name that is really at the top of, I think, a lot of Raiders fans' list. And that, of course, is edge rusher Josh Allen out of Kentucky. Chris, walk us through his pros, his cons, why he might fit the Raiders and why he might not.
I've seen his weight listed anywhere from like 240 to 260, but I think it's probably a little closer to that 260 range. So, he could give them some strength on the edge as well as some pass rushing skills. And as far as a pass rusher, he doesn't have, that like elite first step and get off, but as far as a tactician, he's really sound. He's more than athletic. He put up 31 and a half sacks over the last 3 seasons, 42 tackles for loss. And Raider fans will remember, Bruce Irvin in that 4-3 under getting dropped into coverage. I think Allen's numbers would be a lot higher if he didn't have kind of the same responsibility dropping into coverage at times.
Yeah, no, that's true. I know that, too, he struggles when he goes against some more elite offensive linemen, that he struggled with them, especially his hands. What does he need to do better to maybe take care of that as he makes the step up, and also to play better against the run?
He let guys get into his chest a bit, and coaching at the NFL level, some more power will certainly come into that, because he does have that 6'5" kind of frame. So I think getting some more power, getting his hands a bit better, and just some more pop in his punch will keep those offensive tackles out of his chest.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely needs to, I think, bulk up and get some more strength and work on his hands. Now, Kelly, when you look at Josh Allen, he has been, I think, projected as a top 5 pick in most mock drafts. From a draft perspective, based on what Chris has said and your own knowledge of the player, where do you see him landing? Will he be there at number 4?
It's possible that he'll be there at number 4. I think if the Raiders decide that this is the guy they want, they're definitely going to have to trade up. Because if Bosa goes 1, I can see San Francisco hopping all over him because they need edge. As good as Quinnen Williams is, he's more of a nose, and basically the defensive line's all they've drafted in San Francisco. And at this point, I have no idea what the Jets are going to do. But I think if the Jets don't go offensive tackle, I definitely think they'd be all over Josh Allen at 3.
Yeah.
So if the Raiders decide that this is what they want, they're going to have to go up to 2 and possibly 1 to get him.
Yeah, interesting. Chris, now let's move on to the next guy. And actually, Kelly, in his first mock draft, had this player coming to the Raiders at number 4 if he's available. And that was, of course, Quinnen Williams, who Kelly just mentioned as a nose inside defensive lineman. Talk about his upside, some of his challenges, and why he might be a good fit for the Raiders moving into 2019.
He's been kind of talked about as a nose, but he played everywhere on the line for Alabama. I've had some video of a couple of sacks, him getting it from the 5 technique. You're not going to be able to reach block the guy in the run game. He can beat double teams. He'll really open the door for Hurst and P.J. Hall next to him with those double teams. He only put up 10 sacks, but 8 of them came last year, which was his only year as a starter. And he's got that prototypical 6'4", almost 300-pound size. He's just a modern-day defensive tackle.
Yeah, and Kelly, for somebody like Williams, that's a guy though that if you're the Raiders, you don't trade up to get like you might for Josh Allen, correct?
I wouldn't think so. Defensive tackle is not as big a need as edge, and we all know that. If Williams falls to you, I mean, I think you're excited. You have no problem throwing that pick in really quick.
Yeah.
Or even, Atlanta would love to have a defensive tackle like Quinnen Williams. If you're comfortable going down to 14, I'm sure, you could probably get a pretty good haul from Atlanta to go from 4 to 14. It's just whether or not you're comfortable enough in this draft to move that far down. But if Williams is there at 4, they will definitely be getting calls.
And Chris, one of the criticisms that I keep hearing about Williams, and you mentioned it early on when you first started talking about him, and that was that he was only a 1-year starter. Is that really isn't that enough of a sample size for an NFL team to say, hey, the kid's either got it or he doesn't?
Yeah, because you got to figure the people that are most going to be looking at this guy are coaches, and they're going to say, yeah, I can really work with that. His pure power alone, you're going to want that in the middle of your line. It'll free so much up for everybody else.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, the other guy, before we end this segment, and we'll spend a few minutes on this one, and that is Clelin Ferrell from Clemson. At the edge position, another edge guy. What about Ferrell? He had a great defensive effort in the national championship game, which I think raised his stock as far as the general fan goes. But when you broke him down on tape, what is it about him that makes him special and might make him jump up into a spot where the Raiders would take him?
I think he's really going to fit what they're looking for. He's, again, 6'5" and a legitimate 260. He plays with that length. He plays with that power. Basically, over 3 seasons, he had like 50.5 tackles for loss, so he's getting into the backfield. He's not going to be that pure, like if you're looking for a Von Miller type of speed rusher, you're not going to get that with him. He's going to be more of a speed to power kind of guy. And I think it would fit, what the Raiders' defensive line needs.
Well, and I like, and you said it in your piece too, Chris and Kelly, I like the fact that he can get small and get inside. And to me, I almost like him better than Josh Allen. I don't know about you. I know Josh Allen's the number one edge guy. Don't get me wrong. If he's there, I would take him too. But if you have to go with Farrell, I don't think you're missing that much off.
Oh, no, they're different types of players, but they're the same. You're going to get similar production, just from different ways.
Yeah.
If you're looking for that straight speed, you want Allen. Farrell's not going to, he's not going to blow you away with his athleticism and everything like that, but it's just the arm length, the strength, the punch. I mean, he's going to I kind of throw it. He's like what Jadeveon Clowney has turned into to me. Farrell's going to be great against the run. He's not going to put up monster sack numbers, but he's going to get pressure. He's going to get his 8 or 10 sacks. And I think if you've got a speed guy on the other side, you've got a perfect complement.
And that big push up the middle with Maurice Hurst and P.J. Hall and hopefully some of the other guys that are coming off injuries. Now, when you look at these guys, Chris, they all three of the ones that we talked to, Allen, Williams, and Farrell, all really fit well into Paul Guenther's system, don't they?
Yeah, especially Farrell. I think if they're going to go edge, I could see where of all of them he would really fit. They had so much problems dealing with, jet sweeps and outside runs that they started playing like Frosty Rucker out there on the edge, and it certainly hurt the pass rush. So with Farrell, you get a guy that can, not only hold ground but attack in the run game, as well as a guy that can get to the quarterback.
Now, Kelly, we're talking about defensive players here. I think the Raiders should, unless something crazy happens, I think they should go all defense in the first round. That's my opinion. But is there a guy, if you're the Raiders at number 4, I don't see any offensive player that's a top 4 pick. Do you?
I don't. If last year they made a different selection, Jonah Williams would be a possibility. But I mean, with taking Colton Miller, you're not going to go offensive tackle,
right?
And it's your top 8-10 guys are mainly going to be defense. Unless they just throw a curveball and they go old school Raiders and DK Metcalf blows up the combine like I think he might.
The ghost of Al Davis returns.
Yeah, that would be the only person I would even consider in the top 4 that they might take, and that would be an incredible reach.
Yes, and that was not a slight at Al Davis. That is just how he did things, and we can understand that. Chris, we're going to keep you on for the next segment, so don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit of offensive players, Marquise Brown, and then a couple other defensive players that Raider fans I know are very familiar with, as we go through draft targets for the Raiders based on the breakdown, the popular series on silverandblacktoday.com by our senior NFL analyst, Chris Reed. When we come back, we'll pick it back up. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to, of course, Las Vegas' only all-Raiders show, and that is the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. We'll be right back.
CBS Sports Radio.
This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back, Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1145. A reminder, our show ends today at 9:45 a.m. Pacific. For those of you outside the Pacific time zone, got another note today from John in Afghanistan. He can't tell me where, but he's actually listening to the show. So our fighting men and women also listening across the globe on radio.com. I appreciate that very, very much. And thank you for your service. We are visiting with Chris Reed, our senior NFL analyst at silverandblacktoday.com. We're geeking out on looking at the X's and O's and draft opportunities for the Raiders. Chris's popular segment, The Breakdown, which is now the Draft Breakdown. You can check it again on the website, silverandblacktoday.com. Okay, Chris, we talked all defense in the first segment about your breakdowns. Let's go now with an offensive player and a guy that you highlighted, and that is Marquise Brown, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Here's a guy that there's no denying the speed with this guy, and the fact that he also creates a lot of yards after the catch. What else is it about him as a wide receiver that makes him so appealing?
He has a better route tree than I really expected going into checking him out. He's a guy that the combine's really going to matter because they right now he's listed as under 170 pounds, and only 5'10", so he really needs to hit those speed numbers. But that 18.3 yards per catch average is going to be really appealing to some coaches, and if you use him right, I think he could be a really good player and productive in the league.
And also, when you look at his downsides, right? So you talked about the size. Clearly, I mean that's always going to be an issue when you talk about that. What other things have you seen in the film, Chris, that might have you concerned if you're a Raider scout?
When I talk about using him right, he's not a guy you're going to put at X, put outside, and just throw deep passes to all the time. He really struggled with contested, 50-50 balls coming down, with the ball in traffic. He's a guy you're going to want to play in the slot, let him beat one-on-ones. You can certainly run slot fades with him and stuff like that, but he's not if you want a guy that you can stick outside the numbers and say, just go beat your guy and we're going to throw the ball to you deep, you're not going to make a living with Marquise Brown.
Okay, so Kelly, Marquise Brown, where do you have him right now in the draft, and do you think it's a reach if the Raiders were to take him?
I mean, if I'm not as big on Marquise Brown as some people, I think the size is going to be an issue. I mean, he's strictly going to be a slot, in my opinion, and there's some other guys in the draft I like just as good you can get in the third and fourth round.
With equal speed, you think?
Close.
Okay.
I mean, speeds when his 40 time comes up at the don't care. You see on film how fast this guy is.
Yeah.
So straight line speed's not.
Is he Tyreek Hill fast?
He's close. I think he's close.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyreek Hill, and because Tyreek Hill, it's not just straight speed; it's the cuts, it's the moves. I mean, he's quick and fast.
Right.
I don't see Brown as a target for the Raiders. If they go first round wide receiver, they're going to go for a bigger body guy.
Okay.
I don't think you're going to, that second round pick, I think you're sticking defense with that as well. So I don't think he'll be around for a position the Raiders would legitimately think of taking him.
All right, good conversation there. Okay. Chris, the other guy you talked about, going back to the defensive side, and I love the focus on the defense thus far because I think the Raiders really need to do and make a huge splash and make big hits in the draft, especially in the high rounds. On the defense. Another edge guy that you broke down for us, and that was Florida State linebacker Brian Burns. He's also an edge pass rusher. What is it on film with this guy and what you've seen throughout the course of this past year that makes him a good selection possibility for the Raiders?
I was really impressed with, of all the people, Brian Burns, really opened my eyes. Going into it, 6'5", 235, you kind of expected a guy that's going to get knocked around at times. He didn't attack the run, but he was able to, hold his ground. And as a pass rusher, his get off, his ability to get small, there were times that tackles didn't even get a hand on him, as he turned the corner. As far as pure pass rusher, of all the guys I've seen so far, he's the best pure speed pass rusher.
Well, and Kelly, I think with this one, he is a phenomenal player. I think he'd be an amazing addition to the Raiders defense. But I don't think, and Chris, I know you mentioned this too, I don't think he's a number 4 pick by any means, but I also think he'll be gone before 24, don't you?
Oh, yeah, he'll definitely be gone before 24. Brian Burns is basically what everybody thought Arden Key was going to be. A little undersized speed rusher. I really like Brian Burns. The one thing I can't get the Clemson game out of my head. He got stonewalled by Mitch Hyatt, who I think has no chance of being a tackle in the NFL. And I kind of worry about, I mean, he's got counters, he's got moves. His spin move is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
But I just worry about, is he really 235? Is he going to have enough bulk and enough size to kind of hold up? And every time I think that, I think of the Clemson game.
But doesn't a guy just have a bad game?
No, I know, I get that. But it was so
overwhelming. I didn't see the tape, so.
Oh man, he's just getting stonewalled. I think the whole defense for Florida State had one hurry in the whole game, and
wow.
I mean it was just brutal.
Chris, what about you? What concerns you with Burns? You share some of the concerns Kelly has and what he's seen?
As far as like how he would fit the Raiders, my big worry is just, in the run game, he was kind of just holding ground, and they do need somebody off the edge to actually be able to be a factor in the run game, because they just got ran on too much last season.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting, and you like his motor. I like the guy's motor a lot. Like he's just a football player, and I love seeing that in a guy. And the Raiders, I think, need that on the defensive side. They need guys like that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Okay, the other guy that you looked at here, Chris, was a linebacker, and I've always been earlier in the year. I was saying, gosh, the Raiders need linebackers. They don't have linebackers. It's been years since they have linebackers. Then I started looking at things and saying, you know what? The way linebackers play today is much different than they do. You have a lot of edge guys who will jump back, and so the linebacker position has changed. But you looked at Devin White, a guy I really like out of LSU. What is it about Devin White that made you look at him in this first grouping of draft breakdowns, Chris?
It's just like you were talking. It's like we were texting back and forth talking about how much linebackers have changed now. He's kind of the prototypical sub linebacker. He sideline to sideline is not a problem for him. I thought he was a little slow sometimes with diagnosing plays, but when he would pull the trigger, his get off was quick. He's not the most pure pass rusher. It was more like he would get an open lane to get to the quarterback, but he really fits what teams are looking for in linebackers now.
Kelly, what do you think of Devin White?
I love the potential that he has. The diagnosing plays is an issue, but you also got to realize that he went to LSU as a running back. He's been playing linebacker. He's basically been playing linebacker for 3 years.
Yeah.
So the potential there, get a good linebackers coach, get him in a film room. I mean, because speed he's going to knock people out. I mean, he's just going to be sideline to sideline. He's good in coverage. He's not going to be the best as a pass rusher.
Yeah.
But especially in this system and the way the NFL is going now, coverage is going to be the most important thing, and he's going to be able to stick to. He can go on a slot guy. He can go on a tight end.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, I think here's another guy, ironically, out of LSU, like Arden Key was, who at 6'1", 240. I mean, this is a guy that if you draft him, you got to get him in a program really quick and bulk him up, get him stronger, because he got manhandled a little bit here and there, did he not?
Yeah, and he had a hard time getting off blocks and stuff, but the way the NFL is going, I mean, you have the Cardinals that were playing a safety full-time at linebacker. Yeah. I don't even think Buchanan is over 220 pounds. Size it's almost like it doesn't even matter anymore. They just want a guy that they can put in there that can cover ground against these spread offenses.
So for you, Chris, out of these 6 guys that you've so far outlined, Josh Allen, Quinnen Williams, Farrell, Brown, Burns, and White, and I know not all of them are number 4 pick quality guys, but at that number 4 pick, if you had to put down a bet in the sports book here in Las Vegas, based on availability, of course, always, if he's there, who do you think the Raiders are going to end up taking?
I think they'd take Farrell because I think Williams and Allen would be gone. I'd really love to see, what Williams could do for, Hall and Hurst and how he would just open that up. But I really think Allen and Williams will be gone. White, I think you'd have to trade down. There's no way Marquise Brown is a number 4 pick. Burns is, kind of in the same thing. So out of all of them, I'd say Farrell would probably be the guy.
All right, Clellan Ferrer. How about you, Kelly? What about you? Still sticking with Quinnen Williams?
Well, I mean, I agree with what he's saying. I would love to see Quinnen Williams fall down there. I think he would be a massive upgrade to that defensive line. But the odds of him the odds of Farrell being there are really good, to where Williams is going to be a little bit of a stretch. If he falls there, they should hop on him in a second.
Yeah.
But if not, if your backup plan's Cleveland Farrell, you've got a pretty good backup plan. Yeah.
Well, and I guess, Chris, the Combine is a big deal because you get to evaluate some players there, and a lot of players jump up and help themselves there. Out of these guys, when you start to look at 24, 27 pick, and then I think, 34th or 5th, whatever the Raiders pick is, in that second round, is there a guy that you think could perform well enough at the Combine that the Raiders might say, hey, you know what, he's worth taking a first or a second flyer on?
I think the biggest problem is most of these guys like Burns, I think he's going to do so well at the Combine that he's going to be gone before they get to 24. And same thing with White. I mean, White's probably somewhere around number 10, So I don't think there's anybody. They would almost have to hurt themselves to be able to for the Raiders to have a chance at them.
Yeah, no, that's no doubt. But hey, listen, Chris, man, appreciate you spending so much time with us today. Make sure you read Chris over at silverandblacktoday.com. You can read all 6 of these draft breakdown profiles of these players, of Allen, Williams, Farrell, Brown, Burns, and White. And there's more coming, right, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
We appreciate that, man. All right, brother, we'll talk to you real soon.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
All right, Chris Reed, our senior NFL analyst, our X's and O's guy, the coach for silverandblacktoday.com. We thank him for joining us. Now, Kelly, we're just a reminder to everybody, too, we're off at 9:45 today, Michigan State versus Purdue, college basketball coming up here on CBS Sports 1140 a.m. What's the one guy that you think that you saw over the last couple of days of Senior Bowl that you might be concerned that the Raiders take because the coaches fell in love with him? Is there somebody that pops out to you? Is it Isabella?
No, I'd have no problem taking Isabella if you're getting
in the
him
second round.
If you're getting him in the third. I can't.
Okay.
Or if you trade down in the second, like if he's a late second round pick, you could talk yourself into that.
Yeah.
And the one guy that I'm a big fan of, and nobody's talking about because he's an underclassman, is Greg Dortch out of Wake Forest.
Dortch, awesome. Yeah.
I would rather have him in the third than Isabella in the second or in the third. I just think he's a more complete player. But I mean, if they trade back and pick him up, I mean, he's going to be a player in the NFL.
Absolutely. All right, when we come back, we're going to close the show with Kelly's Audible. You don't want to miss this one. It's pretty controversial, a good discussion. 702-889-5978. We'll talk to you real soon. You're listening to Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
The law.
This is Cliff Branch, former of the Oakland Raiders, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 4-time Pro Bowl, and you listen to the Silver and Black Show.
Number 21, who should be in the Hall of Fame. Thank you, Cliff Branch. We are back on Silver and Black today. And this is going to be our Audible segment with Kelly doing it today. By the way, we were going to talk a lot about prop bets today. The show's short, so we're not going to probably get to it. But David, our engineer, David Stepanian, just mentioned that Gladys Knight, who's singing the national anthem, is the over-under on her time of singing the national anthem is 1:50. So would you take the over or the under, Kelly?
Well, from some insider information I just got earlier, I would be leaning the under, but I wouldn't throw that out there before I got my bet in because now everybody's going to hit it,
right.
And that 1:50 is going to be like $1.46 by the time we get to the sports book.
I just love that the prop bets are unbelievable, and the stuff that you can get out there is a lot of fun. It makes the game fun, especially when you hate one of the teams and you want to see the other team win. And if they don't win, at least you have some other action going. Anyway. We are going to go now into the Audible segment, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelly here, who's got an interesting one today. Kelly, take it away.
Okay. This past week, the Chicago Bears head coach was asked in an interview about calling Kareem Hunt. And the coach comes out and says, yeah, I talked to him. I just wanted to see how he was doing as a person, Basically, that may have been what the conversation was about, but the fact that it got leaked to the press and came out was them throwing out a buoy to test the waters. Hey,
absolutely.
What's the backlash going to be if we try to sign this guy?
Yeah.
Everybody now is on a clock because someone has already went out there and the Bears are interested. So my Audible, I was thinking, would and should the Raiders look at signing Kareem Hunt? We heard David's package this morning. We saw we know what the Raiders feel about the domestic violence issue. That is a huge organizational decision to make.
Yeah.
My kind of angle on this was if the Raiders would sign him or were going to, now is the time to do it. Because there is so much going on, everything's in flux. This is going to kind of go by the wayside, but it's not going to be front and center like every other team that signs him.
Right. And the Raiders, by the way, I think to your point, we heard it earlier in the show with the story David did on the Safe Nest donation here, and of course Fred Biletnikoff's daughter being a murder victim in a domestic violence situation. It does raise the question of, and I think, again, I deplore domestic violence. I've been married 23 years, and my wife and I probably have thought about, being upset enough with each other that we would physically, but we never have. We never crossed that line. I never would. I have 4 sons. I teach them never, ever. Would you do that? That's not something to even consider. That said, when does somebody deserve a second chance? If they're truly remorseful, if they truly have gone through counseling, and if they've gone through, does that then make it okay for a team like the Raiders, who have a strong stance against this for all kinds of reasons, up to owner Mark Davis, to sign him? And if you want to call in and join in on that, in your opinion, 702-889-5978 is the number, 702-889-5978. But to me, you're right now, and I knew this would happen. I knew that Kareem Hunt, once he was ostracized and kicked out of the league for what he did, would come back. But who was going to do it? The Redskins got all kinds of flack because of what happened with them, and the fact that they were able to sign someone who had just gone through actually repeated domestic violence incidents, which is much different in my view. Oh, yeah, and they talk about Kareem Hunt had a couple other incidents, which we don't really know anything about. Right. And to be honest with you, one of them was supposedly like at a nightclub with somebody. As someone who lives in Las Vegas, we all know stuff like that happens on a nightly basis. I don't really consider that to be that big of an issue. If there's some there's no details. Yeah, there's some dust up between a group of people in a bar. Right. That stuff happens. I'm not worried about that. It is the video with the woman that's everybody's going to be looking at. I hate to say it, but he is a young Pro Bowl caliber running back. Yeah. If he's playing at a Pro Bowl level in 3 years, I mean, we've seen it before. The Ray Lewis incident, he was involved in a double murder. Michael Vick was in federal prison, came back and played football. Joe Mixon's a rising star, and we've all seen that video. Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive tackle, is going to have an issue with this coming up in the draft. And his teammate from the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill. Yeah, Tyreek Hill. Threw somebody downstairs. Yeah, threw it. Yeah. So, I mean, we're seeing this, but the outrage goes away when people start winning. Yeah. And to me, real quick, our listener, Ed Marshall with Joe, he said, no, signing Hunt is a bad deal. We already have a kicker. Boom. All right. But do they? Or do we? Because, I like Carlson, but I said Carlson will be there at least 5 years when they signed him. But here's the thing. Again, you go back to, do you want that problem? And then, of course, you talk about Kareem Hunt, and then all of a sudden, then the Kaepernick people come in and say, well, yeah, but Kaepernick can't get a chance. Kaepernick is not as good of a player as Kareem Hunt was on the field. Kareem Hunt's good. Kareem Hunt can start in the NFL. Kareem Hunt can play football. But for the off-the-field stuff, right? Yeah. So for Kareem Hunt, again, I have a daughter. My first child, my oldest, is a daughter. So domestic violence, sexual assault, all these things are very personal to me as a father of a daughter. But at what point do people deserve a second chance, and when they don't? When do they not? 4 or 5, 6 times later, okay, even one time is bad enough. But if you've done and you've committed to getting better, to getting counseling, to doing that, then is it open? The Bears, you're absolutely right. They put up a trial balloon to see what would happen when they did it. And you know what? The reaction wasn't that bad. It's Super Bowl week. Pro Bowl week, Super Bowl week. So everybody's focused on the big game. So there's not a lot of talk about that. You're not in the middle of the season where you have the normal grind day to day. So, and by the way, if the Bears were to sign him, wow, what an addition for that team. Oh yeah, that you got Tariq Cohen back there, good player, but not a guy you can have to be like a main back. Have no idea what happened to Jordan Howard last year. He would disappear for weeks at a time. Absolutely. And I said when this whole Kareem Hunt thing happened, he will get signed again. We all know that. It's just a matter of when. And I think the second the suspension comes down from the NFL, you're going to have your answer. Because if he gets 8 games, I think a team who's, week 6, week 7 will sign him knowing for the rest of that season he's not going to be on the roster. And you've got that much time for this to blow over of them originally signing him and for everybody else to start doing everything else, working out, And it depends on the suspension, too, because there's been guys who've been suspended for games that can still practice, right? Sometimes they are. Sometimes with this one, they probably won't. You have to be away from football. With this one, I would want him to be away. Yeah, so it's out of sight, out of mind. Yeah. Until, everybody's excited for the next season and, oh, hey, look, we've got this new toy for the offense. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. It's an interesting question. The Raiders have a history of giving guys who've had trouble a second chance, not domestic violence trouble per se. People with substance abuse or attitude issues going back to Matusak, a bunch of guys, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays down. But certainly anybody from a talent level on the field, let's not even think about the stuff off the field. Kareem Hunt's a good player. So anybody's going to take a look at it. But I think he's got to do a lot of work to show that he's remorseful, that he's gotten the counseling and the help he needs so that he never, ever, ever does something like that again. I mean, it's just pretty simple. So we'll see how it goes. But Kelly, man, thanks for coming in today. I appreciate you being on the show.
Not a problem.
Great job. Want to thank also Austin Gayle, our guest from Pro Football Focus, and Chris Reed, our senior NFL analyst as well, who gave us that breakdown. Make sure you check out the website, silverandblacktoday.com. We also have a podcast, which we do during the course of the week in addition to this radio show. Don't forget to subscribe to the show in your favorite format, whether it's iTunes, whether it's Google, whether it's Spotify, which we're up on Spotify as well. You can catch it Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcasts. You can get this archived radio show as well as our podcast. During the off season, we tend to do more podcasts and kind of keep them on a subject matter that's more focused, but make sure you do that. Whew. Another busy day. It's going to wrap it up today. Make sure you stay connected with us. Visit silverandblacktoday.com. Follow us on Twitter, too. Great conversation, as always. Silver, Black, the number 2 day. And check out, again, the podcast and make sure you subscribe. For my co-host today, Kelly Kriner, and engineer David Stepanian, I'm Scott Branson, and we never sign off, Raider Nation. It's always football season. It's always Raider Nation. Thanks for listening, and until next week, may the autumn wind always be at your back. Have fun. We'll talk to you next week. We're going to have a big Super Bowl preview. Vinny Bonsignore, the Rams beat writer, and a friend of the show, he'll be on live from New Orleans to cover that. We'll also have some other live reports from the Super Bowl, as well as any Raiders news and information that comes up during the week. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for listening.